Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Suzanne Peterson, and joining me today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Mario Paralo. Today marks 105 years since the Australian Corps took part in the Battle of Amiens. On this day, 105 years ago, the British Army launched an attack with the Corps across a front of 10 miles to the east of the important rail junction of Amiens. The main thrust of the battle was by two corps, the Australian Corps on the left and the Canadian Corps on the right. Before the battle, the commanding officer of the Australian Corps, Lieutenant General Sir John Monash, sent the following message to his men. For the first time in history of this Corps, all 5 Australian divisions will tomorrow engage in the largest and the most important battle operation ever undertaken by the Corps. They will be supported by an exceptionally powerful artillery and by tanks and aeroplanes on a scale never previously attempted. I entertain no sort of doubt that every Australian soldier will worthily rise to so great an occasion for the sake of Australia, the Empire, and our cause. By the end of the first day of the operation, the Australian and Canadian Corps had achieved the largest advance made by Allies on a single day during the entire war. Their advance was so great that it could be measured in kilometres, nearly 13 for the Canadians and 11 for the Australians. In the first 14 hours of the attack, the Australians captured nearly 6,000 German prisoners, along with more than 100 artillery pieces. Hundreds more prisoners and a great many more enemy arms passed into Australian hands over the coming days. The Battle of Amiens so demoralised General Erich Ludendorff that he said the Battle of Amiens was the black day of the German army in the history of war. He added, "This was the worst experience I had to go through." It was in fact the beginning of the offensive that led to the end of the war. This evening, we warmly welcome Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League Australia, ACT branch, and Group Captain Alan George, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We warmly welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Gympie South State School from Southside, Queensland. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea.
Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front till the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they'd done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as described in the entrance to the memorial's gallery. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record that they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Charles John Donoghue. Charles Donoghue was born in September 1887 in the town of Moolameen, New South Wales. Known as Charlie, he was the second eldest of 6 children born to Michael Donoghue, a labourer, and his wife Carolina Maria. Charlie grew up in the riverside town of Echuca in Victoria, where he attended St Mary's Catholic School. When the First World War broke out in 1914, he was working as a labourer. Charlie Donoghue enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 25th of October 1916. He had previously been rejected for service owing to an old jaw injury, as well as poor eyesight and teeth. Accepted for service on this occasion, he was assigned to reinforcements of the 14th Battalion and commenced a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service 2 months later, sailing from Melbourne on the troop ship Medic. In February 1917, Private Donoghue and his comrades disembarked in Plymouth, England. They proceeded to camp to continue training before heading to the front. Donoghue contracted mumps and was sent to hospital to recover. He did not join his unit in the trenches until May, narrowly avoiding the carnage suffered by his unit at Bullecourt. Donoghue and his comrades rotated in and out of the front lines before being transferred to Belgium, where Donoghue would take part in his first major battle of the war, with an attack on German positions at Messines in June 1917. The attack was a major success, with the Allies capturing the heights around Messines within a matter of hours. In the days after the battle, Donoghue and his comrades spent time defending the gains they had made, repulsing multiple enemy counterattacks. Donoghue was wounded in action during an enemy bombardment. Hit in multiple places and badly wounded, Donoghue was evacuated to England for treatment. He remained until September, when he rejoined his unit at the front, in time to take part in the Battle of Polygon Wood. Donoghue's unit then moved behind the lines for a period of rest, before taking part in further battles at Broodcinda and Passchendaele. The 14th Battalion spent the remainder of the year enduring a wet and cold winter in the Flanders mud. This continued into the new year, as Donoghue and his comrades manned the front lines around Zillebaker. On the 10th of February, Donoghue and his comrades were engaged in labouring tasks when the enemy dropped mustard gas shells on their position. Unable to fit his masking time, Donoghue succumbed to the effects of the gas, along with more than 80 others. Afterwards, Donoghue spent periods in and out of hospital before properly rejoining his unit in July 1918. His return to the front came in the aftermath of the German Spring Offensive, which attempted to break through the Allied lines. In the wake of the failure of this offensive, Allied forces put plans in motion for their own offensive, which would begin on the 8th of August 1918. The attack began in the early hours of the morning as enemy lines were bombarded with artillery, coming under attack from tanks, aircraft and infantry. A soldier who was there wrote, all hell broke loose and we heard nothing more. The world was enveloped in sound and flame and our ears couldn't cope. The ground just shook. Donoghue was allocated as a stretcher bearer for the attack as his unit advanced towards the village of Morcourt. As they pressed forward, Donoghue and the other stretcher bearers sought to aid and evacuate the wounded from the battlefield, coming under heavy shelling and machine gun fire. Donoghue was hit, suffering a devastating shrapnel wound through his back. He was evacuated to a casualty clearing station behind the lines for treatment, but nothing could be done for him. He succumbed to his wounds later that day, the 8th of August 1918. The battalion's chaplain wrote home to Donoghue's mother, "Your gallant son was killed in Australia's greatest battle and passed without pain to a higher service. That day we drove the Germans back for miles and saved Amiens. The sacrifice was not in vain, though to you the price will seem immeasurable. You must have much pride as well as sorrow when you remember how your boy, as a stretcher bearer, in the stern test of war, proved himself a man, brave, cheerful, willing, and loyal unto death. The company's hearts are sore for the mothers who wail at home, and though few will venture to write, many would like to tell you how much they miss their mate and how very sorry they feel for his mother." In the days after Donoghue's death, Allied forces continued to push the enemy back towards its final line of defences. In what was dubbed the Black Day of the German Army, the Battle of Amiens proved to be a turning point that brought about the end of the war. Today, Donoghue's remains lie buried in Fouilleux Communal Cemetery beneath the words chosen by his family, "The just shall live forevermore and the reward is with the Lord." Charles Donoghue was 29 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right. among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Charles John Donoghue, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development program. We wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you.